Welcome back to the Prepared Mind. It is Saturday. What does that mean? That means it is time for the weekly wrap up. Are we closer to shit hitting the fan? Are we further from it? Is everything a-okay? Is it going to get better? My answer is no, things are not better. Look at this list of stuff this week. Pow, 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 all the way down the line. Another full sheet of what went wrong. We talk about a lot of times, how hard is it to make good decisions, to fix things, to cooperate, to do the right thing? I guess it's harder than you and I would think. It's incredible to me. I think it's easy to make good decisions. You get some advisors, you look at some history, you apply some education, a little experience, you make the right decisions. What I've got here is wild and almost stupid, right? Let's start off with one of these things that is continuing to be a problem. Let's start off with the India tariff. That's right. This week, President Trump, the week before and months before, we had Mexico and, of course, China going all the way back to last year on tariffs. Now let's just add India to that. That's right. India has been taking advantage, and so now their special privileges are gone. Tariffs on India. And by the way, Australia was on that list too, over their aluminum imports to us or their exports to our imports, right? But the Trump administration backed off. But it's out there. It's now hanging over Australia's head. That's a big deal. More trade notice, more trade wars, more economic warfare or economic, you could call espionage, kind of screwing around with people's heads. That's on the table. That's not good. It's not good short term. It's not good long term. And speaking of other countries, Iran is continuing to antagonize the United States. Right? We are antagonizing them. They're antagonizing us. It wasn't as marked as the week before where we had, apparently torpedoes or mines or other types of equipment, but there's still antagonizing going on with Iran and their missiles and who is buying who from what, right? That is still, it's not settled. In fact, speaking of things that aren't settled, let's look at Kim Jong-un up there in North Korea. Apparently, all that peace and love and happiness and skipping through the daisies, that's not going to last forever. This week it came out that he's being accused of, and we don't know if it's true. We just know what the press reports, what the official sources want to be discussed, is that he's enriching uranium. And that's going along with last week and the week before, where North Korea might be testing more missiles. I don't know if it's intercontinental ballistic missiles, but it's missiles. So that's continuing, this antagonism between the United States and essentially the BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. I have a funny feeling that Mexico is going to join that. That's not a smaller union. It's looking to expand. China is a couple billion people. India is 1 billion plus people. Russia, as far as its population, isn't nearly as big as that. Not nearly, but they're geographically large. Brazil is geographically large. South Africa is strategic in their metals, their mining operations. Mexico is very strategic when it comes to mining. I know a lot of people don't realize it, but they are massive silver miners, the world's biggest silver mining output. And we're having trouble with them down there. How hard would it be to believe that the socialist president of Mexico doesn't have a lot of nice feelings and a lot more in common with the socialist communist nation of China and Russia and the entire BRICS union? The BRICS union appears to be getting stronger because this week China and Russia decided they're going to trade back and forth with their own currencies and just get rid of the U.S. Federal Reserve note. That does not bode well for the U.S. dollars, which are going to come back. They're not needed out there anymore. They're not being used as much, right? Same with treasury bills, T-bills, bonds. That market right there, the need for U.S. dollars, it's going away because these countries are saying, look, we're just going to trade our own way. We're going to set up our own international currency exchange, our own electronic forms of transferring. They don't want to use the U.S. dominated SWIFT system. Now that SWIFT system is how Iran is being punished. They can't do payments internationally using the SWIFT system, right? It's a private club, and since they're bad boys, they are kept out of the system. Anyways, we're getting more of that. That does not lead us to prosperity. The things that I just cited push us towards shit hitting the fan, towards an economic collapse, more social chaos, right? And speaking of social chaos, the Democrats and Pelosi this week, they cannot let Trump off the hook. They need to keep him on the ropes and punching him left and right. They're saying, look, we don't want impeachment. And I was like, hey, that's interesting. That's a turn for the better, at least. But they go, no, we don't want him impeached. We want him in prison. And it's just, you pull your hair out. What are you people talking about? They're continuing to push against or push on their partisans. They want Democrats, little commies and socialists out there, all of these left-wing, and I consider them extremists and radicals. They want these left-wing people to be calling for and wanting Trump thrown in prison. And I'm going, for what? If there's not a crime, right? High crimes, misdemeanors are impeachable offenses. If there's nothing to impeach him over, then what are we calling for him to be thrown in prison for? In other words, I think it's more partisan division. I think it's more partisan rancor. And it's going to be, as we get here into the summer, more violence. Now, it is fascinating. The weather this year is cooler than normal. Today, California, it's only supposed to get up to like 64 degrees. It's June. Kids are out of school, right? It should be in the 80s, maybe even the low 90s where I'm at. Other parts of the country, cloudy, rain. Of course, up in the Midwest, they're still getting lots of clouds, lots of moisture, and terrible growing. Terrible growing. In fact, this week, speaking of that, right, they let out some big numbers on the crop reports, the planting, what's going on, what's in the ground. The planting is not going well. There are millions and millions of acres. I had one report that said 6 million and possibly 10 not being planted, and another one that was 30 million acres unplanted this year. That's a lot of acres. That means you're going to have not only higher corn costs, but higher wheat, oats, barley, soybean. Across the board, agriculturally, everything's going to go up because the difference has to be made up. There's going to be those dollars that should have gone to corn are going to want to go other places, so they're going to compete. And then also in livestock, because they're supposed to feed them all of that corn, all those corn products, the chopped up stalks and leaves, that goes into hog feed, cattle feed, chicken feed. Gone. Not being produced. And what is planted, they're saying is very sick. It is not healthy. That means we're going to have lower yields. Not good at all. What else happened this this week? Are we getting closer to shitting the fan or not? How about internet? It went out for an hour this week. No, as far as I'm concerned, no satisfactory explanation as to why. That doesn't bode well. You know, social media especially kind of went down. I was like, what is going on as I was dealing with it? I thought, is this just my area, which is pretty common to have trouble in my area, but then I started hearing reports. No, it's everywhere. It was everywhere. For a while there, it was down. As far as I'm concerned, unsatisfactory reasons for why that happened. You know, and this week there were also, especially the end of the week here, terrible economic reports that came out. And Chairman Powell came out and was very soft-spoken and hinted that there's going to be a reduction in rates, possibly in the next couple of weeks. He didn't have to say those words, but he knows how everything he says is parsed, is examined, every syllable, every piece of punctuation, everything. As a result, right, the media and the economic media reporters were all expecting a reduction in the prime rate, the interest rate, what it costs to borrow money. So they're hinting we're going to have to start letting the money out. Now that makes Trump happy. As a result, the Dow was really up this week for the first time in 7 or 8 weeks. It's up. The week finished out higher. In fact, it finished out, I think, above 26,000. Right? It was below 25,000 at the beginning of the week. It should have gone lower because of all the tariffs and other bad news. But because, as Craig Hemke would say, Chief Goon Powell, Chief of the Federal Reserve Goons, he is very much letting everyone know, nope, rates are going to be coming down. When all year long we were supposed to get an increase in rates as of the end of the year, but when the stock market fell and we had the crash that was only saved and salvaged and spared by the plunge protection team back in December, right? They'd been flat. No raising, no lowering, because to raise it would continue to harm the economy, to destroy it. And to lower it, well, that's admission that their system that we've been living under for the last 10 years, their quantitative easing, their zero interest rate policies, those are failing. They didn't recover anything. There is no greatest economy ever. It's all smoke and mirrors, manipulated figures, and bullshit. So they can't lower them either, but now they're actually saying we're going to need to lower them. You know, Trump has been calling for quantitative easing, more QE, more free money, in other words. That's what QE is, pumping cash into the economy. Only it's looking like it's going to be unsterilized this time. Like they're going to give, you know, universal basic income, helicopter money, free corporate money, along with low interest rates. What's that going to do? Inflation, inflation, inflation. It could inflate the stock market values as well. It could go up to new highs, but it's based on more free fake money. And we should see an increase in precious metals. They have gone up significantly this week, which is an indicator that money is moving into safe haven areas. And speaking of safe haven areas, a ton of money has just been flying into the bond market from hedge funds, right? Rates are lowering because they're just selling the shit out of them. The yield curve's inverted. You could hear about that anywhere you want on any other channel if you want more specifics and more detail, right? And another big chunk of news that says, hey, shit hitting the fan is coming, is more attacks on free speech, on alternative press, on actual logical thinking by the demand from social media companies and giants that they silence any opposition, that they label any opposition view to theirs as extremist, as Nazi-like or fascist-like, right? By doing ad hominem attacks on people, creators on YouTube and other social media sources, that they cannot be allowed to exist. No funding for them, not even being allowed to exist. That push is happening. At the same time, they got pushed back on big time. There are now antitrust investigations being started by Congress on social media giants, and it is bipartisan, which is quite fascinating, right? There is an information war going on. And for that reason, I'm going to call that bad news for shit hitting the fan. It's going to cause more social tension, more partisan tension, because the left is screaming for the right to shut up. And the right is screaming, we just want to be able to be heard if we have something to say. A lot of tension and pressure there. And finally, I want to end this with Trump and his tariffs, right? The Mexico tariff was started last weekend late, right? Mexico responded with a threat. I don't call it a veiled threat. I call it a threat, saying they have 250,000 migrants that they're restraining, intimating that they could let them go, that they could have 250,000 people on our border. Right? So the tariffs are on. Then they're like, no, we're going to have some good talks. Then they said, no, talks aren't good. Then talks are good. Then Vice President Pence comes out and says, we're just going to go with 5% tariffs on Monday, and we'll continue to have our talks. You know, they're reinstated, all is good. You know, it's crazy. They've got 100 or 250,000 migrants they could turn loose. Just in the month of May alone, I believe there were 100,000 more illegal immigrants that were detained and arrested and put in facilities. They need to be shipped back. They are overwhelming us. And I don't think Mexico really gives a crap. I know that Trump is now threatening them with the tariffs. But if other countries want to continue to see illegal immigrants being forced into the United States, pushed by NGOs and other government organizations, I'm sure countries that are supportive of that will buy those Mexican goods. Countries like China and Russia that want to see turmoil in the United States of America. Other non-allies of the United States, maybe secret people who have a grudge against us. Member states of the EU, and maybe the bureaucracy that runs the EU, maybe they want to see America in trouble. And so they'll say, hey, Mexico, send your materials, your goods over here. We don't care, we'll buy them. So Mexico, they may not be hurt at all by these tariffs. In fact, they may do better elsewhere. Who knows? It's hard to say, but what we do know for sure is we're getting closer to shit hitting the fan. And the things that I cited, that's the evidence. We've got tariffs, we've got migrants, which is a national emergency. It's being ignored. The mainstream media is being secretive. They're siding with the Democrats on calling for Trump to be arrested and imprisoned. Meanwhile, we've got a physical invasion, 100,000 people, and that's just what they caught. Imagine how many got through. Maybe 2, 3, 4 times that amount. Up to another 250,000, another 500,000 people got through into the United States. That's a lot of people. And they're just invading us. If we had the military on the border, and we had a force of 10,000 Chinese troops, or 10,000 Russian troops, and they were coming through, we would call that a military invasion, an act of war. Just 10,000, even 1,000, we'd be saying, hey, isn't that war? Hello? No, we've got hundreds of thousands trying to get through every month. That is an invasion. Scary stuff, folks. Get prepared. Food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense. Get over to Patreon for $2 a month. We do videos every day. For $2 a month, you get gear reviews. For $2 a month, you get articles with commentary, pointing you in directions so you can see what's coming. Because it's hard for me to cover all of this in videos. I'm trying to do all I can, and I appreciate you coming over to Patreon. I appreciate you watching the videos. I appreciate you sharing the links to these videos, both on YouTube and at Patreon, everything you can. And getting over to the club, the preparedmind.club. That is your store. You guys and your purchases fund it, pay for that web space. Right? There's nothing free. All of this research costs money. Talking to people costs money. Spending all this time on this. We've got some staff that work, costs money. So you guys, by supporting us at Patreon, help pay for that and make it happen, make it real. So I want to thank you for doing that. You've done just a marvelous job. And I'm going to continue to ask for more. If you're going to buy from Amazon, might as well buy it through the Prepared Mind store. Click on our link, right, and then go in and just take care of your shopping needs. You're already there. And that helps fund the efforts here. And I'm going to continue to ask for you. Tell people to get prepared. Tell them to come to the Prepared Mind at YouTube and just start watching some videos and get some ideas about what's going on. Let them decide for themselves. Let it be their idea. But all you have to do is put the website address, the URL. Put that in front of them. So you guys be cool. I want to thank you for everything. It is one hell of a week. And next week, it's going to get a hell of a lot crazier. It is coming. And every week I do this weekend wrap up, and every week it just gets crazier and crazier. So you guys be cool. I'll be back with you Monday. And definitely, eyes open, stay frosty. Right? Because chance favors the prepared mind is yours. Godspeed, Semper Fi.